My wife and her best friend tried to frame me for cheating so she could run off with her ex, then she got pregnant and said the baby was mine. I've always considered myself just your average guy, nothing flashy, nothing over the top. I grew up in a quiet little town, raised by two hard-working parents who taught me the importance of being honest, staying loyal, and pushing through life's challenges. I followed a pretty standard path, finished high school, went on to a local college, and eventually landed a solid job. It wasn't anything exciting or high-profile, but it paid the bills and gave me a steady, comfortable life. That's why this whole mess blindsided me. I had no idea how to even begin processing what was happening. I'm sorry if this all comes out like some drawn-out rant, but I guess I need to start somewhere. And it all begins with my wife, Stella, and what she did. Stella and I first met during our senior year of college. She was one of those driven, go-getter types studying business management with her whole future mapped out like a blueprint. We got introduced at a party hosted by a mutual friend, and something just clicked between us. It didn't take long before I was completely smitten. She was everything I thought I wanted in a partner: sharp, hilarious, stunning, and she seemed to share my core values too. We talked about life, goals, dreams, and everything seemed to line up perfectly. It honestly felt like we were meant to be. After 3 years of dating, I popped the question. There wasn't anything extravagant about it, just the two of us sitting on a bench in our favorite park, but it was meaningful, and she said yes. We tied the knot the next year, and for the first few years, things were good. We bought a modest little house in a friendly suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors actually say hi and kids ride their bikes without a worry. We even started talking seriously about having kids someday. Everything felt full of promise. If only I'd known what was coming. As time passed, small shifts started creeping into our lives, nothing major at first, just subtle differences. Stella's job got more intense, and she began working longer hours. That didn't bother me much initially. I knew how career-focused she was, and I was proud of her for chasing her ambitions. But soon, other things began to stand out, things that were harder to ignore. She became almost obsessed with how she looked. That was unusual for her. Stella had never been one to fuss over fashion or spend hours getting ready, but suddenly she was hitting the gym religiously, buying new clothes every week, and putting a ton of effort into her hair and makeup. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off casually, saying she just wanted to feel better about herself. I wanted to be a supportive husband, so I didn't question her any further. I figured maybe it was just a phase, something to boost her confidence. But then her phone started becoming a constant fixture in her hand, and not in the usual scrolling through memes kind of way. About a month ago, my own phone mysteriously vanished. I remember the day like it just happened. We were out picking up groceries when I realized I didn't have it on me. I figured I'd left it back at the house, but when we got home, it was nowhere to be found. I turned the place upside down looking for it, retraced my steps from earlier that day, but it had completely disappeared. What really stuck with me was Stella's reaction. She was strangely unfazed, almost like she couldn't care less. She told me not to worry about it and to just get a new one. When I brought up the idea of reporting it stolen, she was quick to shut it down, saying it wasn't worth the hassle. Her response didn't sit right with me, but I convinced myself she was just stressed from work and didn't want more on her plate. So I let it go and bought a replacement. But after that, more things started to feel off. Stella was barely home anymore, always saying she had to stay late for work or attend some last-minute meeting. And when she was around, she was glued to her phone, texting or scrolling, always with this focused, secretive look. She started taking calls in private, stepping out of the room mid-conversation, or slamming her laptop shut the second I walked in. One night, during dinner, her phone started ringing. I asked, just casually, who it was. Not out of suspicion, just making conversation. But she got weirdly defensive, like I was accusing her of something. It turned into an argument, completely out of nowhere. That wasn't like her at all, and the whole thing left me feeling more unsettled than I wanted to admit. Then one evening, while she was out running errands, I was home alone, and I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something was wrong. So, against every instinct I had, I did something I never thought I'd do. I sat down at our shared desktop computer. We each had our own laptops, but there was also this old desktop we barely used anymore. I figured if there were answers, maybe I'd find them there. After digging around a bit, I stumbled across a folder hidden deep in the system. It was labeled with a random string of numbers, something no one would notice unless they were really looking. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. Inside were documents and screenshots that shook me to my core. There were messages between Stella and some guy named John. At first, the name didn't ring any bells, but as I read on, it hit me this was her high school boyfriend. The messages weren't outright graphic, but they were definitely personal. They reminisced about their time together, shared old memories, and even made plans to see each other again. And that wasn't the worst of it. There were screenshots of texts between Stella and her best friend, Cindy, only they weren't gossiping about clothes or work or harmless stuff. They were plotting. They were actually discussing this elaborate scheme to make it look like I had been cheating. That missing phone? Yeah, they took it. They planned to use it as part of some twisted setup to prove I was unfaithful. The whole thing was meant to paint me as the bad guy so Stella could leave me guilt-free and pick up where she left off with John. Reading those messages felt like the floor had collapsed underneath me. The woman I loved and built a life with was scheming to ruin my name and walk away clean, for what? A guy from her past? It made no sense, but the proof was right there in front of me. Over the next several days, I played it cool on the outside, even though I was falling apart inside. I quietly gathered every bit of evidence I could, took screenshots, saved files, even started recording our conversations. I knew I had to protect myself because it was clear Stella wasn't going to play fair. Then things took an even darker turn. One evening, I overheard her talking to her mom. She thought I wasn't home, but I had come back early and stayed quiet. They were whispering, but I heard enough to piece things together. Her mother was in on it too. She was guiding Stella, telling her exactly how to spin the story and make it all look like I was the one to blame. They even talked about bringing John and his kids into our house after I was out of the way. It was like they were planning a complete invasion of my life, as if I could just be erased and replaced. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The woman I'd built my life around, along with her own mother, was plotting to destroy me. It honestly felt like I'd stumbled into the script of a terrible drama, except this was my reality, not some made-up story. I knew I had to move quickly before their scheme unfolded any further. But instead of confronting Stella right away, I decided to play it smart and flip the script on her. I contacted a lawyer, explained everything that had been going on, and asked what steps I should take to protect myself. At the same time, I started subtly planting seeds of confusion in Stella's mind, little comments here and there about how our relationship felt like it was slipping, how distant things had become. I wanted her to think I was completely clueless, that I didn't have the faintest idea what she was planning behind my back. Then came the night that changed everything. Stella came home late, reeking of alcohol, clearly rattled. Her face was flushed, her hands shaking. She wasn't even trying to hide the fact that she'd been out drinking with John. She mumbled something as she stumbled into the kitchen, going on about how things weren't going the way they'd hoped. She didn't know I was standing right there in the doorway, hearing every single word. The next day, I decided it was time to stop pretending. But I didn't blow up at her. I stayed calm. I told her straight out that I knew what she was planning and that if she wanted out, I'd walk away quietly, no drama, no screaming match. Her face said it all. She looked like someone had yanked the rug out from under her. For the first time, I saw actual fear in her eyes. She didn't deny a thing, didn't even try to cover it up. But she didn't say sorry either. She just froze, like a deer caught in headlights. We ended up having a long, awkward talk that night. It was obvious she hadn't expected things to fall apart so fast. She scrambled to recover, offered to break things off with John and work on us. But it was too late. The trust was shattered, and there was no fixing what had been done. We agreed to separate, and I moved out the very next day. I stayed with a buddy while we started figuring out the details. It hurt more than I expected, but deep down, I knew it was the right move. I couldn't keep living in a marriage built on deception. But of course, nothing about this situation was simple. A few days after I left, Stella reached out and asked if we could meet. I assumed she wanted to iron out the last few details about the separation. But when we met up, she dropped something on me I didn't see coming. She told me she was pregnant. My first instinct? I didn't believe her. I thought it was another manipulation tactic, another way to keep her claws in me. But then she showed me the positive test. And the dates lined up. She swore up and down that the baby was mine. And now, well, here I am, stuck in this storm of doubt and second guessing. I honestly don't know what to think. I keep wondering if I'm being selfish, if maybe I'm letting my anger and hurt get in the way of doing the right thing. But then I remember everything she did, the lies, the planning, the betrayal. And I can't shake the feeling that even if the child is mine, the relationship will never be whole again. So, Reddit, am I the jerk for confronting my wife about her plan and choosing to walk away instead of trying to fix our marriage? Should I have fought harder to save it, or was I right to cut my losses? Update 1. Hi everyone. First off, I just want to say thank you for all the support and advice you've given me. It's meant a lot. Since my last post, I've been trying to wrap my head around everything, but it hasn't been easy. Stella's been relentless. She hasn't given me a moment to think. I moved out and checked into a hotel, hoping for a little breathing room, but she's been blowing up my phone, leaving voicemails around the clock, and even showing up at my workplace unannounced. It's like she's panicking, doing everything she can to pull me back before I get too far away. I told her straight up that I needed space to sort through everything, to figure out what the next step looks like. But that didn't stop her. Now her mom's involved too, calling me, begging me to come home and fix things. It's exhausting. I feel like I'm being pulled in every direction, and no one's actually thinking about what I need. One decision that's been weighing heavily on me was asking for a paternity test. It wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't move forward without knowing for sure. When I told Stella, she broke down crying, begging, accusing me of not trusting her. But I stood my ground. I couldn't make any commitments until I knew the truth. Not after everything. The wait for those test results has been brutal. It's like I'm stuck in this limbo, with no idea what my future is going to look like. And just when I thought things couldn't get more messed up, I got a call from John. Yep, Stella's high school sweetheart. The same guy she's been sneaking around with. From the second he opened his mouth, he was aggressive. He accused me of being the reason Stella turned to him. Said I wasn't man enough to keep her happy. That she deserved someone who really appreciated her and didn't question her loyalty. The conversation quickly turned nasty. He basically threatened me, said if I didn't drop the paternity test and go back to Stella, I'd regret it. He didn't spell it out, but his tone was dark, cold. He warned me that Stella was fragile and that if anything happened to her because of the stress I was putting her under, I'd have blood on my hands. It was straight up manipulation. He was trying to guilt-trip me, bully me into coming back. But instead of caving, his words just hardened my resolve. I wasn't going to let this guy, this whole twisted situation, control my decisions. After that call, I became even more paranoid. I started wondering just how deep this all ran. Was John working with Stella and her mom? How far were they willing to go to get what they wanted? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became I couldn't trust any of them. The only thing I could rely on was the truth. And the only way to get that was to wait for the paternity results. Then, just yesterday, I got a call from the clinic. The results were coming in earlier than expected. That was a small relief, but also a whole new source of anxiety. I didn't even know what to hope for anymore. Part of me wanted the baby to be mine, but the other part, it was terrified of what that would mean. If the child's mine, then I'm connected to Stella for life. And after everything she's done, I don't know if I have the strength to carry that weight. While I waited for the paternity results, my mind kept circling back through everything that had happened over the last few months. I started putting the pieces together, trying to see the full picture with clearer eyes. I kept thinking about how Stella had grown distant, how she'd take those phone calls behind closed doors, and how often she'd come home late claiming work had piled up. At the time, I brushed it all off, figured she was just busy or stressed like anyone else. But looking back now, it feels so obvious. She'd been laying the groundwork for this for a while, and I was just too trusting, or maybe too naive, to catch on. I also started noticing little things that hadn't made sense before, but now seemed suspicious. Like Stella's sudden interest in our finances. She had never cared much about managing our money, she usually left that part to me. But recently, she'd started asking pointed questions about our savings, investments, even our insurance policies. At first, I thought she was just trying to be more involved, maybe taking responsibility. But now I can't help but wonder, was there a darker reason behind it all? And then there was her mom. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Stella's mother might have had her hands in this too. She's always been a little too involved in Stella's life, borderline controlling. And looking back, I can see the subtle ways she steered Stella's decisions, nudging her away from me and toward John. I can't help but question now if this whole thing, our marriage falling apart, John suddenly coming back into the picture, was part of some long game, some twisted plan she'd been pushing from the shadows. Sitting in that awful limbo, waiting for a piece of paper to tell me what my future might look like, I honestly felt like I was stuck in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my life, had been turned completely inside out. I found myself glancing over my shoulder more often than I'd like to admit, wondering if someone was watching me, or waiting for their next move. I'll update you all as soon as I get the test results. For now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water and figure out how to move forward. I truly mean it when I say thank you. Your support has been helping me hold on. Update 2. Hey everyone. Things have been chaotic, and honestly, I've been struggling to make sense of it all. After the call from John and all the anxiety over the paternity test, something finally clicked. I'd been overlooking one major piece of this puzzle. Cindy. Cindy has been Stella's best friend for as long as I've known her. They've always been close, pretty much inseparable, but until now, I hadn't given much thought to what part Cindy might have played in all this. A while back, I came across some old texts between her and Stella when I was combing through the files I found on our shared computer. I transferred a few of them to my phone, but at the time, I didn't fully understand what I was looking at. Now, with everything else out in the open, those messages hit differently. They weren't just casual friendly banter. There was something else woven into them, something manipulative and calculating. It was clear Cindy knew about John the entire time. And not only did she know, but she had been actively helping, even encouraging, the affair. That's when I realized Cindy wasn't some innocent bystander in this mess. She was a key player. She'd helped set the whole thing in motion. And if I wanted the full truth, I had to go directly to her. But I knew I had to be careful. Cindy's smart, manipulative in her own right, and I couldn't let her squirm her way out of this. So I reached out and told her we needed to talk. I didn't give away how much I knew, but I let just enough slip to rattle her. To my surprise, she agreed to meet that same day. We picked a quiet little cafe on the edge of town. It wasn't a place either of us went to often, which made it feel safer, no chance of bumping into anyone who might recognize us. As soon as we sat down, I skipped the small talk and got straight to it. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I knew. I knew about John. About the affair. About her involvement. For a second, her face drained of color. She looked like she was gearing up to deny it all, but then something shifted. Maybe she realized she was cornered. Maybe she was just tired of hiding it. Either way, she didn't run. She sat there, took a breath, and started talking. Her voice was shaky at first, but as she kept going, it got stronger. According to Cindy, this all started when Stella and John reconnected online. Stella had been venting to her, saying our marriage felt dull, that she felt stuck and underappreciated. Instead of encouraging her to communicate with me or work through it, Cindy pushed her to reach out to old friends, specifically John, who had just come out of a nasty divorce. Stella took her advice and sent John a message. What began as a friendly catch-up turned into something much more. John was smooth, charming, and made her feel like she was the center of the universe. They started talking more, texting daily, sharing their frustrations and feelings of emptiness. Cindy admitted that she supported it every step of the way. She told Stella she deserved to feel happy even if that meant finding it outside our marriage. At first, Cindy painted it like she was just offering emotional support. But it quickly escalated. John started showing up during the day when I was at work. The emotional affair became physical. And Cindy? She was the one covering for Stella. Helping her sneak around. Organizing fake girls' nights so Stella could spend time with John without raising any red flags with me. Cindy claimed she was just trying to help her friend find happiness, but as she talked, it became clear this wasn't just about friendship. There was more going on here. Something colder. Something calculated. Cindy had always been the kind of person who couldn't help but meddle in other people's lives. It made her feel important, like she had a purpose if she was in the middle of someone else's drama. She told me she never intended for things to go this far, but let's be honest, what did she expect? When you play games that involve tearing apart a marriage, there's no just a little. She loved the control, the role of puppet master, and Stella's situation gave her the perfect opportunity to play it. She was the one nudging Stella toward John, reassuring her when guilt crept in, and keeping her on script when doubts surfaced. Cindy even admitted that she helped craft the entire plan, fabricating evidence of an affair, all to frame me as the unfaithful one. That way, Stella could walk away with her hands clean and be with John in the open. It wouldn't matter whether the baby was mine or John's, because in their version of the story, I was the bad guy. Cindy's job was to keep Stella focused, calm, and committed to the lie. As Cindy spoke, I felt this cold, steady anger settling in my chest. This wasn't just a friend making poor choices. This was a calculated, deliberate attempt to destroy my life. She had manipulated Stella, encouraged the affair, and played a direct role in setting me up. And the worst part? She acted like it was all for Stella's happiness. When she finished talking, she looked at me with a mixture of guilt and fear. She knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. She started to backpedal, saying she never wanted things to get so out of hand. She insisted she was just trying to help Stella feel fulfilled, like that excused anything. And then, just like Stella and her mother, she reached for the same emotional manipulation. Cindy started crying, begging me to think about Stella, saying the stress could harm her, especially now that she was pregnant. She tried to make me feel like walking away would hurt the baby. Said Stella was fragile, that her mental health was suffering, and that continuing down this road would only make things worse. But I'd seen this playbook before. It was just another guilt trip, another desperate move to keep me quiet and compliant. I sat there, listening to Cindy's tearful pleas, feeling sick to my stomach. These people had treated my life like some kind of twisted game, and now they were trying to use guilt as a weapon to stop me from seeking the truth. But I was done being manipulated. I told her flat out I wasn't dropping the paternity test. I needed to know the truth before I made any decisions about my future. She tried to argue, but I cut her off. I told her I didn't trust her anymore. Whatever relationship we had was broken beyond repair, and I didn't want to hear from her again. I got up and walked out of that cafe with a strange mix of anger and relief. I finally had the full story, or at least enough of it to know exactly who I was dealing with. And in that moment, I felt something click. This had never been just about an affair. It was about control, about manipulation, and about how far people would go to get what they wanted, no matter who they hurt along the way. But I wasn't going to let them win. I was more determined than ever to see this through, no matter what the paternity test revealed. The waiting was unbearable, but at least now I had clarity. I knew the truth. Update 3. Hey everyone. I'm back with the update many of you have been waiting for. The paternity test results are in. They came in just yesterday, and let me tell you, the tension leading up to that moment was intense. Stella, John, and I were all present when the results were revealed. To be honest, John looked completely unfazed, like he already knew the answer and didn't really care what the paper said. It was clear he wasn't going anywhere, no matter the outcome. Then came the truth: the baby wasn't mine. It was John's. John didn't even try to hide how pleased he was. He was practically glowing with pride, smug and victorious. Meanwhile, Stella sat there, head bowed, caught somewhere between shame and shock. I could see it sinking in that her plan had completely crumbled. With the truth out in the open, there was no more shifting the blame onto me. No more pretending. For a moment, I felt this wave of relief wash over me. The cloud of doubt that had been hanging over me for weeks suddenly cleared. I wasn't the bad guy. I wasn't the cheater. I hadn't imagined everything. I was free from the lies that had been choking me. Now, if the test had shown the baby was mine, I still would have gone through with a divorce. But I would have stayed in the child's life, because no matter what Stella did, I wouldn't punish an innocent baby. But with the results confirming John was the father, my path became a lot simpler. The decision was made for me. As John gave me another one of his smug looks, clearly enjoying his win, I felt a mix of irritation and pity. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I wasn't there to fight. My focus was on moving forward, on taking my life back. I walked over to Stella and, as calmly as I could, told her I'd be sending over the divorce papers soon. I said I'd take care of the arrangements and that all she needed to do was sign them. Her face said it all. She hadn't expected me to be this composed, this sure of what I wanted. But I'd already made peace with it. Whether or not the baby was mine, our marriage was over. Stella gave a small nod, her expression lost between confusion and quiet acceptance. Maybe she'd finally realized that no apology could undo what she'd done. The betrayal cut too deep. Even if the child had been mine, the damage couldn't be undone. There was no coming back from this. After that brief exchange, I walked away. No more words, no more tears. Just a clean break. The paternity test had given me what I needed: clarity, closure, and finally, the freedom to move on. I can't explain how much lighter I felt after that. Like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The road ahead won't be easy, but at least I know where I stand now. Before I wrap this up, I want to say thank you to every single one of you who took the time to read, comment, message, or just offer support. Thank you. You were part of what kept me going through the worst chapter of my life, and I'll never forget that. As for what's next, I'm starting over. I recently got a job offer in another city, and I think it's the right time to take it. A fresh start in a new place, away from all the lies and pain. I'm feeling hopeful for the first time in a long time. Thanks again, Reddit. You helped me hold it together when everything else was falling apart.